Many of you know I travel the country teaching healthcare leaders how to engage and inspire their teams. This means that most of the time I'm teaching people like you how to meet the complex emotional and professional needs of employees. It means I'm also teaching leaders like you how to remove toxic employees who damage culture and morale. So it should come as no surprise that one of the questions I get asked the most after workshops and classes and keynotes is this one: what if my doctor is the toxic force? While most of us work with terrific physicians who selflessly serve their patients and their teams, unfortunately some of us must navigate doctors who are the opposite. I regularly hear cringe-worthy stories of providers whose style and approach does considerable harm to team performance. That's why in this episode of Your Practice Ain't Perfect, I'm going to help you plan a course of action for when the doctor is actively disengaged. I hope you don't mind, but this episode is a little longer than most because this is a tough one. Don't go away. If one of your providers is showing up in a way that is damaging to your team, your culture, or the overall atmosphere of the workplace, it's costing you. And truthfully, you don't need me to tell you that. You don't need me to tell you how or why. You already know. In fact, you probably spend considerable time maneuvering around this person's disruptive behavior while trying to shield and protect your team from the worst of it. Let's start by admitting that there is a power dynamic in healthcare, no question. We've all worked in places where those with power seem to get away with more because of their title or position. Unfortunately, this tends to be why so many healthcare managers end up having to deal with a disengaged doctor at some point in their career. I need to acknowledge this power structure with you because the first step in trying to improve your situation comes down to your willingness to try and have a conversation with the problematic person despite that power dynamic. And that can be risky. Some of you watching this video might work up the courage to confront the problem and have a discussion, only to experience a backlash of some kind, whether it's being scolded, yelled at, or worse. But honestly, if you want things to change, you're probably going to have to bite the bullet and have a direct feedback conversation with the provider. My advice: identify one or two things only that you want to ask this person to change. Be prepared to describe what the problematic behavior is costing them, and be concise but direct when having the talk. Let's talk about what that conversation sounds like. And for the record, the names in this story have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. One manager in a recent workshop of mine, we'll call her Lisa, told me about one of her doctors who spends her days slamming things and complaining about patients and snapping at the staff. When talking through this problem with Lisa, she ultimately decided that the most damaging behavior was the way the doctor talked to the staff. So that's what she decided to take on in her conversation with the provider. I helped Lisa thoughtfully plan out how to approach her doctor and what she would say. Here's what she did. At the end of the day, when most other staff weren't around, Lisa asked for a moment of her doctor's time. When the doctor said yes, Lisa walked into her office, closed the door, and simply said, "Can I give you some feedback?" Then she waited. Her doctor absent-mindedly said sure as she busied herself doing other things. But Lisa remained silent until the doctor noticed the silence and looked up. Lisa then said the following: "Would it surprise you to know that most of our team dreads working with you?" She waited a beat, and then softening her tone, she said, "Dr. Smith, you are taking your frustration out on the very people who are here to help you. When you yell or swear at them, it demoralizes them, and it robs you of their effort and respect. This is not an easy thing for me to say to you, but I feel like I owe it both to you and those folks out there to tell you the truth." What followed was an uncomfortable but necessary conversation. Did Dr. Smith get defensive? Did she try to minimize Lisa's feedback? Yes and yes. But Lisa stayed calm and professional. She gave specific examples. And when Dr. Smith tried to shift the focus to other people, Lisa stood up for her team and pushed back, even when it made her uncomfortable. Near the end of the conversation, Lisa asked Dr. Smith what she could do to help her fix the problem. Dr. Smith promised to try harder. Before the conversation ended, and this is key, Lisa asked, what do you want me to do if I see this happening again? They agreed that Lisa would pull Dr. Smith aside immediately if she had concerns. And while things didn't change overnight, they did eventually improve. And just as importantly, Lisa earned the respect of her doctor because, and this is another key, she had the courage to tell her the truth. Now let's break down what Lisa did in that conversation. First, she didn't mince words. She was very direct. And in doing so, she listed specific behaviors. And she also immediately highlighted what the problem was costing the doctor, not why it was harmful to the team. This is key because most of the time, people will change to avoid harming themselves before they will change to begin helping others. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Joe, I've tried this and it didn't work. If you tried to have a talk with someone on an issue like this, did you sugarcoat it? Were you maybe too delicate? Sometimes these conversations only get through when they are uncomfortably, startlingly direct. Let me be clear about something. From time to time in your career as a leader, you are going to have to speak truth to power and stand up for yourself and others. While it's the doctor's practice, that is your team in there, and they need you to stand up for them. To truly serve your team, you might have to draw a line in the sand and decide that some behaviors are unacceptable. You might have to fight back on behalf of your team, your patients, and yourself. This takes courage. It assumes risk, but it's often the difference between suffering in silence and effecting change. So what if the conversation doesn't work? What if no change occurs as a result? Well, then it may be time for you to seek out allies. Can you ask for help and support from other physicians at the site, or from a chief or a senior faculty member or an administrator? Do you have a mentor you can turn to for advice or guidance? Can you call your EAP and talk to someone there about how to proceed? If your conversation alone doesn't work, then stop trying to go it alone. Figure out who can help you and turn to them next. The last thing I want to share with you on this topic is acknowledging that not all situations can be fixed. If over time you get no change from your physician and no support from others in the organization to address the problems you are seeing, then it's probably in your best interests to consider moving on. Remember, your ability to change another person's behavior is extremely limited. Also, an inability to do so does not mean you've failed in your job. If you cared enough to tell the truth and nothing changes, the consequences are on them, not you. The majority of doctors out there are amazing to work with, so take your talents to one of their teams. That's yet another way you stand up for yourself, and yet another consequence for them of the bad behavior. So there you have it. Please know that every situation is different, and that what I'm sharing here is meant to serve only as general advice. If you've successfully navigated one of these situations, please take a moment to tell us in the comments box below what worked. Doing so may end up helping someone else who is going through exactly what you already have. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Hey there. Thanks so much for sticking around and watching the video all the way through to the end. That's fantastic. Now make sure you get new episodes of Your Practice Ain't Perfect delivered right to your email inbox by signing up on my website. Go to joemull.com right now, type in your email address in the sign up box, and you will instantly get them delivered to your email every time a new episode is published. In the meantime, check out some of the other episodes if you haven't had a chance to watch them. Thanks for hanging out.